Hi, everybody. It's Mr. Williams. We're going to talk a little bit about the transition out of President Jefferson's presidency and into the next presidency and what that's going to look like. I just want to talk about a few things here when we discuss the significance of what happens in 1804. A lot of the success of Jefferson's presidency and re-election in 1804 is because of the Louisiana Territory, which is this area right here that I'm marking with the X. Expansion of territory, and also peaceful relations with France, which leads to increased trade and trade that can be really uninterrupted, which is why the New England region up here, which is a big area for the Federalist Party, which is indicated by the orange, that area is heavily supportive of Jefferson. So now the big question is, following this election in 1804, what's going to change, if anything? Well, we know that when Britain and France's war begins to escalate after this election, trade issues continue, meaning when we send goods from the United States to Europe to sell, those goods are often being taken by either the French or the British, because neither side wants the other to gain resources and have an advantage. So in other words, the French do not want the British to receive resources, and the British do not want the French to receive resources. So what Jefferson decides to do is rather extreme and rash, and that's to basically stop all trade with what's called an embargo. And with the exception of a few incoming goods that we are importing from Britain, we're not trading at all. So that same area here that I highlight with the circle is now becoming crippled in terms of their economy because they can't trade. So Jefferson's second term is going to be his last. He can't wait to leave the White House. He doesn't enjoy his second term, and he has no intentions of seeking a third term, whether it's because that second term's so bad or whether he's trying to follow the model established by George Washington. But in 1808, we're going to have a new candidate for the Democratic Republican Party, and that's going to be Jefferson's Secretary of State, James Madison. So looking at 1808, notice we have a lot going on here, excuse me, in terms of, first of all, we have a third party candidate, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But I want to focus on what we see in New England. And notice how this area is once again orange. Well, that was due to the fact that the Federalists had lost faith in the Democratic Republicans, or I should say this region had lost faith in Democratic Republicans, because we have the embargo that heavily is impacting this area's economy. And so they're going to support the Federalist candidate, Charles Pinckney, who's running again in 1808, because they want some change to the economic policies of the government that's hurting their economy. And you'll notice they're also, surprisingly gaining some support in the South. The Federalist Party's resurgence, which they were almost like a dead party, they've resurged in 1808. It's not going to be enough to defeat James Madison and the Democratic Republican Party, which is still much more popular. But you'll notice that Madison has to make policies that are going to make things better for New England in his term. You also notice this other candidate, George Clinton. He had been the vice president to Thomas Jefferson, and he actually picked up 6 electoral votes in the state of New York, which is kind of interesting because we don't see third-party candidates coming in that often and getting votes like this, but we do see it. And the interesting thing about George Clinton is he is a native of New York, so that's part of the reason why he was receiving those electoral votes. It didn't make an impact, but it does bring in some concern about the Democratic Republican Party, because these two individuals were technically of the same party, And we see some people, these electors in New York, not choosing the candidate who won the state, and that being James Madison. So Madison's got a lot of work to do going into a new, with his presidency, because he has to kind of figure out the economic situation with trade. He knows that this war between Britain and France is escalating, and the United States is continuously being affected by it. But it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen in terms of the war, and whether Madison and the United States can stay out of it. Because that war between Britain and France is escalating to the point where it's going to have a major impact on the United States moving forward. And that's something we're going to have to pay attention to and definitely look at. So make sure to please complete the exit ticket for today, and I will talk to you soon.